and welcome to the Daily Space Weather. Smash here, coming at you from the Smash News Network, least busted name of news, just bringing you the most comprehensive space weather and detailed imagery of the sun you'll find anywhere in the world. Some interesting stuff happening here in the past 24 hours in our Christmas Eve edition of the Daily Space Weather. Check out the plasma reorientation that happens up here. As the CME happens, some plasma splashes back down toward the chromosphere. You can see it spreading out there in a transverse wave-like effect. Fantastic imagery there from SDO. And yes, there have been coronal mass ejections since yesterday. Are they directed in an earthly fashion or not? We'll let you know later in the video all about it. Lots of stuff to cover, and of course, earthly weather. Certainly making it in the news today in spades. So let's get to it. Here is the closest star. We've got a new sunspot right up here. Right where my pointer is, new sunspot just rose. Besides that, I don't see any major changes there. A little bit of umbral growth in this area in between these sunspot groups. That's 3169 and 3171, I believe. I don't get hung up on names. Here's the colorized magnetogram. Yeah, it looks like it's a little bit more likely to produce flares there, as there is definitely some turmoil happening at the intermediary region. Some new umbrae forming in there. So let's take a look at volcanoes real quick here to see what's been erupting. Shivaluch producing a 14,000-foot ash plume as it explodes on the Kamchatka Peninsula. Sakurajima exploded as well, 7,000-foot ash plume from Sakurajima. to Kono, flight level 080. As it explodes, it's an 8,000-foot ash plume. 21,000-foot cone of volcanic ash over central Mexico as Popocatépetl explodes. Fuego in Guatemala mildly exploding. Please do not pole vault the caldera. Sangre exploding, flight level 190. It's a 19,000-foot ash plume over Ecuador from Sangre, a 16,000-foot ash plume over Ecuador from Revenador. Cotopaxi, not sure if it's erupting. Sabancaya is erupting in an explosive fashion, flight level 240. It's a 24,000-foot ash plume. Here's your seismic update for the past 90 days. There's your bar graph conveniently placed for you from volcanodiscovery.com. And here is the last 24. No major quakes here. And we're just going to go up the list. It's very quiet in the central part of the planet there. There was a 5.3 at Chile. I think that might have been the largest quake. Quite quiet here. Quite quiet. There was a 5.0 in the Kermadec Islands region there north of New Zealand. The Bonin Islands by Japan. That would be the largest quake of the past 24. That was a 5.5 magnitude at extreme depth, estimated over 520 kilometers. Estimated depth for that quake, and let's get back to space. But first, take a moment to click our links. Visit the links below the video, if you please. Smashomash.com is the homepage. Welcome to the Neo-Renaissance. In 2019, a crack YouTube unit was sent to social media prison for a crime we didn't commit. We promptly escaped the maximum security social media stockade to the internet underground where we survive as producers of fortune. If you have a problem, if no one else can help, and if you can find the content, maybe you can hire the Smash team. So do us a favor by clicking our links. Do yourself a favor by becoming a member of SureMed. It's not insurance, it's an association membership. Although the group membership does allow you access to insurance benefits. Improve your health with a membership with the American Better Health Organization, a nonprofit organization focused on improving the health of its members. And welcome back to Space, a Frontier. These are the voyages of the YouTube channel Smash-O-Mash, our continuing mission to cite facts, zero propaganda, fraud, and nonsense, and provide you with some objective information about the weather in space, and indeed on Earth. We've got some spectacular footage. Some interesting things happening around the Gulf of Mexico. We'll get to it. That's the last 24 hours from SDO. And the radio flux has continued to decline. So another reduction in the radio flux there. It's now at 128 solar flux units. There is the 1-year graph of the 10.7. It's the black line. The red line is the sunspot number, and you should be able to see how proportional those are to each other. They are proportional data sets. If you check the Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard, you can see how similar the radio flux and the sunspot number are historically speaking, going all the way back to 1947 when some French radio operators discovered the 10.7 centimeter radio flux. It's been monitored ever since. Current situation is a little bit of geomagnetic unrest forecast for the 25th, Christmas, and 26th. So there you go. We do have a coronal hole high-speed stream continuing here. So we do have a significantly elevated solar wind speed. We'll get to that here momentarily as well. First Earth magnetic moment from space. That would be the last 4 hours, if all goes according to plan. As that high-speed coronal hole wind stream buffets Earth's magnetosphere. The question is, does Warren Buffett watch the channel? He ought to. We can forecast better, apparently, than anyone in the world. Here's Earth magnetic moment from the ground. We've only proven it over and over again for years and years. The last 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from the ground level. We are expecting some auroral imagery if people are able to go out and film it without freezing into a solid block of ice. So there you go, the last 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from the ground. Some oddities actually showing up there, apparently. Let's let it play through a second time. And by the way, we're definitely seeing some continued anomalies in the ionosphere and the electron flux and so on. We'll get to it in our bonus feature segment, after we cover the more major features, and before we cover meteorology. So here's your current 30-minute auroral forecast. Please note the time and date stamps in the lower right. If you do have any auroral imagery, share it with us on Instagram or perhaps on Twitter, and we will feature it on the channel. So that's your 30-minute auroral forecast there from the Space Weather Prediction Center. And the KP index currently at 3.67. Just this side of geomagnetic unrest, if we see a shift in the magnetic field to the negative BZ direction, we'll go directly into geomagnetic unrest conditions. We didn't quite get to KP5 yesterday as I forecasted, but we did get to KP 4.67. Not too shabby. So here's the solar wind. And we have seen some, looks like CME impacts, some very minor fleeting CME impacts here. We did see the solar wind jump all the way up to nearly 670 kilometers per second there at one point yesterday, or actually early this morning at about 2:15 this morning, a little CME impact there accompanied by a change in the plasma temperature, change in the solar wind velocity and density. That's an instrument switch there at 744. Current conditions are highly elevated solar wind speed here at 552 kilometers per second. Solar wind density 10.2 protons per cubic centimeter. And we do have this negative BZ signal showing up here. That could put us right into geomagnetic unrest conditions if that negative BZ continues. That's the red line in the top pane. Let's continue on, as there's lots of stuff to continue to cover. And thanks for leaving a comment. One audio. Here are your GOES magnetometers for the past 3 days. And you see those spiky readings, those sawtooth GOES magnetometer data sets as are typical with coronal hole high-speed streams. And let's take a look at the top view ecliptic plane. Let's learn to speak the English language and take a look at the top view ecliptic plane field plot. Earth remains in a North Pole current sheet depicted here in green. And nothing to really comment about there. No changes expected soon in that. Here's our line of sight field plot. Solar B field shown in blue, north solar polar field in green, south solar polar field in red. And let's move to coronal holes. Since these North Pole-oriented coronal holes are the ones supplying the high-speed coronal hole wind stream that we're currently experiencing, we do have some South Pole-oriented coronal holes in the southern hemisphere, as the solar polar field reversal process is still taking its good old time. That is a North Pole coronal hole. That is a North Pole coronal hole. This one down here is South Pole-oriented. So we got a long way until the solar polar field reversal process completes itself. We are years before solar maximum. We're going to get the sunspots next. Before we do that, again, visit the links below the video. You can save some cash on your Hemp Lucid purchase by entering the promo code SMASHOMASH10 or by shopping via our link. Thanks to everybody who has picked up the fantastic products, a whole array of different products, whether you need help with your sleep, with stress, with focus. All kinds of CBDs, etc. The best seller is the water-soluble CBD tincture. Again, check out the links below the video. You'll find a link to our Hemp Lucid shop down there, or enter the promo code SMASHOMASH10 to apply some savings on checkout. Today's featured product is, and you can save 25% on it, you can save 25% store-wide with the promo code GIFTS22 on the Redbubble shop. Today's featured product is Universum Liberate. It's the motto of the Galactic Federation Special Forces. We were sick of what was going on in Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, in Lehigh County, in Pennsylvania, in the eastern U.S., in the North American continent, in the northern hemisphere, on planet Earth, and in the entire solar system. So we decided to branch out and start supporting the Galactic Federation Special Forces. And hence, we're pumping products with the motto, the moniker, the slogan of the Galactic Federation Special Forces, Universum Liberate. If it causes your friends and foes to think that you're in the Illuminati, let them believe it. Again, save 25% site-wide. Maybe give somebody a gift receipt instead of giving them an actual gift as they wait for it to get printed and sent. If you visit the link below our video, you will see the products in order of best selling, which may or may not reflect the views of the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. Once again, thanks to everybody who's picked up merch, and congratulations on surviving a global scamdemic so far. If you haven't checked out our playlist for the 12 days of Smashmas, well, what are you waiting for? We put out original music on the first 12 days of December for your listening pleasure. Have you heard Journey to the Center of the Hearse yet? I think it might be the biggest hit so far. Again, these have only been out for a couple of weeks here. 12 Days of Smashmas are listed as a playlist on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/smashomash. See the playlists for all kinds of other features, and let's move to the realm of sunspots. So again, we do have a new sunspot here. We'll have sunspot 3174. It's this group right here under my pointer. Let's take a look at some additional fantastic composite imagery here from SDO. There's the SDO magnetogram plus 304 angstroms. See that great plasma reorientation happening up in here. Here's SDO continuum plus 304 angstroms. Fantastic. Let's zoom in a little bit closer. That excellent CME popping off there. And a bunch of that plasma splashing back down onto the solar surface. Is it too controversial to say that? I'm not sure. Here's a magnetogram by itself. And the place to watch, in my opinion, is this area right here. Because that area right there is evolving. That is a beta gamma delta class sunspot group area. Again, we have seen some umbral growth, and we're seeing some disparities in the rotational progress of those umbrae. That's the last 24 hours from SDO. next we'll look at energetic particles and flaring. Energetic particles, we ain't got none. A couple little tiny spikes here in the proton flux. No relativistic particles to mention here for weeks on end. As far as solar flares, it's been minimal. The largest flare of the past 24 was a C6 approximately, C6.6. And let's see where those flares came from. I'll give you a hint right in here. Actually, this leading area right here, it looks like produced some flares as well. Anyway, that's 94 angstroms. Don't worry, we'll zoom in and show you 131 as well. Well, there's a fantastic zoom in. Epic. How about the same view in 131 angstroms? The other wavelength that takes 10 images per minute instead of only 2. Yes, 94 and 131. They're specifically for the purpose of observing solar flares. So there are some for you to observe. Here's the full disk view in 131. It is the hottest wavelength of all the AIA wavelengths at SDO. Not sure the temperature, but you can find all that information on the Sun Now page on SDO. It'll tell you about the species of iron that is emitting that ultraviolet light, the number of electrons, etc. And let's move on to see what's going on overhead. There's some cold air up there, as the sun has recently risen over Pennsylvania. If you follow us on Instagram, you'd already know that it was 9 degrees Fahrenheit this morning when I stepped outside in only slides with no socks to check the thermometer, as I enjoy the extremes of both hot and cold. That's what's going on overhead over Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. That's in-the-sky.org. And this is, by the way, theplanetstoday.com, and this is not to scale. In other words, the Earth is much farther away from Mars and Jupiter, etc., than depicted in this imagery. So here's your solar system forecast for the next week, and happy new moon, by the way. Here's where things will be in a week. We will have a gibbous waxing moon on New Year's Eve. And let's take a look at coronagraphs. Since, once again, we've got CMEs to cover. This is yesterday. And it looks like the CME that we covered in yesterday's daily space weather video is indeed off to the west and a bit to the south of planet Earth. There is indeed a comet that looks like it breaks up right in here, kind of just vanishes. And here's today's imagery. That's 36 more frames. Let me press refresh. It looks a little funky. There we go. And it does not appear that those CMEs are earthly directed either. Let's remove some additional doubt here by looking at the view from Stereo A, located at Lagrange 5, and Soho Lasco C3, located at Lagrange 1, before we show the 24-hour videos. So there's yesterday's spectacular CME that was actually occurring as we streamed yesterday's daily space weather as we streamed yesterday's daily space weather video. And here's the one coming out of the north. And it looks like it's primarily on the far side and around the North Polar region. Nothing on the earthly side of the sun here. So no apparent CMEs are headed your way. So let's abandon this. I'll let that play through. That's pretty good. Let's show the 24-hour videos from our custom Helio viewer movies, showing SDO 304 angstroms, Soho Lasco C2 and C3 for the last 24 hours. They're just light shows. We're not expecting them to produce any earthly auroral light shows. That plasma not headed toward Earth. Here's a further zoom out. And next, let's talk about filaments, because the likelihood of additional coronal mass ejections in the earthly vicinity remains very, very high. So let's load up the newest imagery here from Cerro Tololo, Chile. Before we play Name That Filament, Well, we've got more filaments to name here, folks. Let's bring up the last image. So lots of filaments here on the Earth side of the solar disk. I'd say that the most likely ones to eject would be these two. And I've got names. I've already named them. So today we're going to play Name That Filament, and I'm going to post directly to Twitter. And I already know what I'm naming them. Those are Serena and Venus Williams. You see, because they look like twins. You get it? You see what I did there? Anyway, follow us on Twitter, like the other 337 people have, on the platform where people think censorship has been fixed. Well, I got news for you. You're living in a fantasy world. Censorship is not fixed. Elon himself has stated that the deboosting continues. He just thinks that his shadow bans are better than Twitter's old shadow bans, so they're going to stay in place because reasons. Meanwhile, people think he's restored free speech. Snap out of your delusional fantasy world. Elon has not fixed free speech. In fact, he hasn't even produced safe self-driving cars. Pretty pathetic, really, as Teslas are still killing people. More information about that at smashomash.com/smashteam, our latest post. Anyway, here's the last about 2.5 hours from GOES 16 SUVI, and you can see there's continued instability in this leading region here. So don't be surprised to see additional stuff erupting, whether it's X-ray photons, coronal mass ejections, or perhaps an alien spacecraft will emerge. Oh, I'm so spooked. Here's the last 24 hours from SDO in ionized helium, 304 angstroms. And this brings us to our bonus features segment, where we'll cover things like charging hazards for satellites from the satellite's community dashboard. We do indeed have some surface charging there in the Central Pacific Ocean, caused by low-energy electrons building up on the outside of satellites, hence the term surface charging. And we have the electron flux here approaching warning levels here, at least from the GOES 16's. Radiographic measurements from its geosynchronous orbit. So electron flux rising here despite the coronal hole high-speed stream not yet ended. There is the NOAA forecast. No arguments from me there. I would tend to agree with that. Here's the 1-year chart to put that in context. That is from solon.info if you want to monitor that yourself on a yearly basis. There you go. There's the greater than 2 mega electron volt electron fluence on a yearly basis. And let's take a look at the massive anomalies that continue to occur in the ionosphere, I guess which are only covered by this channel and nobody else. So, whatever. We've got over 18,000 tweets and not even 350 people follow. There's a huge ionospheric anomaly happening. It used to be over the South Atlantic, somewhere like over here. Then it was over the South American continent, somewhere like over here. And now it's in the South Pacific, somewhere like over there. So, don't know if you cared. Don't know if you were frightened of the ionosphere or not, but perhaps we'll fearmonger at a later time about it. These are the facts. The South Atlantic anomaly has left the South American continent entirely and has moved into the South Pacific because it's now right here near the 30th south latitude line, right there where my pointer is. You can see that striation in the ionosphere. That is the South Atlantic anomaly, no longer over the South American continent, now over the South Pacific Ocean. Instead, it's super obvious that that's the location of it. I mean, you can clearly see it on the ionosphere anomalygram there. It's showing anomaly in megahertz from a 30-day median, and we're having other massive global-scale ionosphere anomalies happening. Wild swings from high to low frequency. It is a contentious ionosphere as we continue on with our coronal hole high-speed stream. So yes, the South Atlantic anomaly has left the South American continent and is now the South Pacific anomaly. These are facts. There you go. Here's the latest image, 13:30 Universal Time. And there's the latest anomalogram. You can even see it right here. That is the new location for the South Atlantic anomaly. It should be renamed the South Pacific anomaly. Next, we'll show the total electron content forecast, which is the free electrons between your GPS satellite and your GPS handset. In other words, it's the free electrons up to about 12,500 miles of altitude. We are seeing continued massive anomalies here, nighttime GPS errors, and lots of free electrons out of place. So huge GPS errors continue over the North American continent, it looks like, although we are having electron levels rising here, so we can expect this to get a little bit more organized. Incredibly low levels there over Africa, actually. So some oddities happening in Earth's ionosphere, Van Allen belts, etc. We've been covering it for a solid week now. You can see those nighttime GPS errors happening over places like the Pacific Ocean. We'll let it play through one more time. The total electron content, it's the coupled thermosphere, ionosphere, plasmasphere electrodynamics model. The free electrons from the inner portion of the outer Van Allen belt all the way down to your GPS handset. Here's your latest solar intensity gram, and there is your latest magnetogram. Again, this group down here, that is indeed a sunspot. Not very big, not very spectacular, but nonetheless, it has ombre. So there are the fields. It is already a beta gamma class. Not sure if it has increased or decreased in size, but there's the full disk rock back. And the next thing we'll have to do is move to the realm of meteorology, which is certainly interesting to say the least. Yes. Meteorology. Lots of stuff going on. We've got some spectacular imagery to show you here at the Smash News Network, Least Busted Name in News. If you want to support the channel, do so on the Smash Team site, smashomash.com/SmashTeam. It's the official paid subscription service for the Smash News Network, Least Busted Name in News. You'll get additional content at the gold or silver subscription level, thanks to our gold annual paid-up subscribers. It is the best value. It includes complimentary merch. So help us out with a few bucks per month as we're paid just this side of nothing to put the content on the junkware platforms like YouTube. And let's take a look at surface winds. Yes. Because winds are definitely a story over the U.S. Check out the wind speeds across Lake Superior and Michigan and Huron and Erie and Ontario. Major winds, and it's all caused by suckage. Yes, suckage. Because that polar low is pulling the more massive air toward it. Yes, most winds are caused by suckage. If you think the weather sucks, if you think the weather blows, there's a distinct possibility that it might actually suck. All right, so here are the surface winds of the eastern world. Here are the jet streams of the eastern world. Here are the jet streams of the western world. As you can see, cold air blasting in from Western Canada, making it all the way to, I don't know, Cuba? Yeah, Cuba, for real. Here are the surface winds of the west. You can see that low. Everything is, all roads lead to that low at the moment. And here are the surface winds of the central world. And these are the jet streams. So here's what's going on in terms of clouds and fog. And you may see some interesting features indeed. We're going to show you some incredible footage from Galveston, Texas here in just a moment. That's clouds and fog over the Americas. 3.9 nanometer radiation satellite taking imagery of a croissant-shaped Earth and projecting it onto a fake Adobe Photoshop spherical NASA-induced sphere. Yes, Earth. It's shaped like a croissant. Deal with the facts. Here's your weather.gov map, and those are freeze warnings all around the Gulf states. Yes, hard freeze warnings is what those are. Also Florida. So stock up on orange juice before it goes skyrocketing in price. to $8 per half gallon. So we scroll down to show you the key. If your county's lit, click your county or your waterway, wherever you're located. Click your area. Weather.gov is the site. Blizzard warnings continue around places like Michigan. And check out this footage. This is some time-lapse footage from the Skycam at Galveston, which is not playing because reasons. There we go. So there's some time-lapse footage. And if it looks like the Gulf of Mexico is boiling, it's because, well, it's not really boiling. But the dry, massive air rolling in from Canada is causing rapid evaporation, cloud nucleation, steam and fog to show up as it mixes with the warmer Gulf air. Forced evaporation is what's going on there. And yes, it looks like a huge disaster happening. It is just a natural process of a bunch of cold air meeting a bunch of warm air in a spectacular squall line forming there over the Gulf of Mexico. So we shared it on our Twitter. That's another reason to follow us on Twitter. If you don't want to follow us on Twitter, or if you don't have Twitter, I don't blame you. We use social media sites for business purposes, so we have an excuse to use all the pathetic and putrid big tech platforms, which barely function on their best days and do not function at all regularly. Don't worry, folks. Their software is only 20 plus years outdated. So here is your positive snow depth change forecast, as another couple of feet of snow are forecasted for portions of New York and small areas of Washington as well. That's your 72-hour GFS positive snow depth change forecast in inches, as a second system is going to come through, as well as a second wave of cold air. We'll show you that forecast also. So here's your temperature anomaly forecast. It is based on the same model, the GFS. You can see that second smaller mass of cold air blasting its way in there in about 2 days. And it'll be anomalously warm in Montana. Last but not least, let's show the entire pressure and precipitation map. There is pressure and precipitation for the next 72 hours. Some strong storms expected to show up there in Washington. Some wet snow. Let us know if you got iced in places like Washington and Oregon. There were some huge ice storms forecasted. Let us know in the comments what happened with that, or perhaps share some imagery or videos or whatever on Twitter or perhaps on Instagram. Again, links on the homepage at smashomash.com. If you ain't got a Twitter account, make one. Censorship is not fixed. Continuing on to our pressure map. So here's our pressure map. You can see this very high pressure air in the central portion of the U.S. Let's advance this. We're going to let this play through to show you the 3-day Euro model forecast for atmospheric pressure. There's your Christmas pressure forecast. A weaker low there moving from Montana into the Dakotas and then into Iowa for Monday. And another low approaching Washington, as you can see there. This is where we expect things to be at 12 noon on Tuesday, the 27th. Continuing on to see some lightning here on our NASA GOES lightning mapper, a large string of lightning stretching from the Bahamas all the way up into the central Atlantic. Really stretching all the way to Newfoundland. Dag, that's a long string of lightning. Let's see if we have any strikes happening at the moment. Indeed we do. So some lightning strikes happening there in the Atlantic. That's lightningmaps.org, by the way. If you want a real-time lightning map of your own, lightningmaps.org is highly recommended. So here are the full 50 states of ALSA, the allegedly United States of America, former nation, now banana republic. And here are the lower 48. Once again, congratulations on surviving a global scamdemic so far. You're doing a fine job. A fine job. Probably better than any bureaucrat in your area. So there's vertical motion of water droplets in the air column as Great Lakes snow continues. And here you can see some of this wind accelerating and creating low clouds right here, because as the winds leave the land, they tend to be accelerated by water, and you can see some of the effects happening here in the Gulf. That's why we showed you Galveston earlier, which is right about here. And there is water vapor. You can see everything rotating around that extremely powerful low there, now located in eastern Canada. Heavy moisture there moving into the Pacific Northwest. Here's your recap. It's time to close this thing out. Dear viewers, please do not freeze into a block of solid ice. Here's 3.9 nanometer radiation, making a croissant-shaped Earth look spherically. And there is your water vapor map. Thanks for tuning in. Happy Christmas, Merry New Year, etc. Happy holidays. Whatever you want to say from the Smash News Network, least busted name and news. Thanks for tuning in. Congratulations once again on realizing the channel exists. I'll have been your host, Dan, a.k.a. Smash-O-Mash, signing off. And may that solar wind be at your back. Facts stated in this video not necessarily suppressed or endorsed by big tech criminal organizations.